This is Martin Speake at Trinity Laban Conservatoire in room 261 interviewing John Warren. Actually, I've forgotten the date.
2nd of February 2019.
Thanks. First of all, when and where were you born?
I was born in Montreal, Canada in 1938.
And what are your earliest memories of music? Did you have music in the family?
Yes, my mother used to play piano in the silent movies in the small town she came from in the eastern townships of Quebec. It was an Irish family, and her sister, my aunt, also played piano. But we did, for most of my childhood, we didn't have a piano in the house. And we only listened to music on the radio, basically, and heard it in films.
What kind of music were you listening to?
Well, the popular music. I was born in 38, so late 40s, the 50s. And it was all, a lot of that popular music of that time. There were a lot of big band singers still around. It was quite jazz influenced still. It was before rock and roll hit. So, most of the arrangers had come up through the big bands, so all the vocal arrangements were written by people with a jazz background, or that's the way it appeared to me, and I was drawn to that until I was a teenager, and a group of my friends at high school who were also interested in jazz started buying records. You could get Canadian records for like 96 cents, but for an American import you paid an extra 20 cents something. There's another interesting connection with England, because one of my high school friends was called Doug Smith, and his brother was Don Smith, who was a trumpet player and who became the session organizer for the Musicians Union. And he had a big record collection, so his brother inherited this. So we all got into these recordings, because Don Smith was listening to Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker and all that. So
what year would that have been? When you were 17-ish then?
Or a bit earlier. Yeah, 50. Yeah, because I went to university when I was 17, so it was about 14, 15, 16.
Okay, so that music that was current.
Apparently, yeah.
Charlie Parker was alive.
Yeah. The first 78 I bought was Au Privé and Now's the Time by Charlie Parker. And I found in a supermarket record shelf a copy of Intuition by Lenny Tristano, at a reduced price. It was like the most amazing find. So, and also this group of friends in Montreal at that time, it was a carryover from the past of when there was Prohibition in the United States. Montreal was a wide open town, and they used to run trains from New York City for people to come up and party in Montreal on the weekends. So it had every theater, there was loads of theaters, all the big shows came to Montreal, all the big acts, the vaudeville acts, and all the musical acts. So there was, and this was still carrying on. So we got to hear, we'd go to this theater in Montreal, and you'd watch a movie, and then you'd see Louis Armstrong or Coleman Hawkins or Lionel Hampton, Red Norvo.
Oh, they'd be playing?
Yeah,
right.
Live concerts,
After a movie?
Yeah. It's just insane, yeah.
Did you see any of those people?
Oh, yeah.
All the ones you mentioned?
Yeah. And the Jazz at the Philharmonic was still going, and they used to come to the big hockey rink because it was such a big show. And we heard people like, I can't remember all the people, but it was amazing, all the people that were in that production. Illinois Jacquette and Lester Young,
Wow.
Sarah Vaughan I heard, because I got her autograph.
Did you see Charlie Parker there?
No, he came to Montreal once, but I was too young to get into this club, and he was playing there with Paul Blais.
I've got the recording of that.
Have they? Oh, wow.
It's been issued, yeah.
Oh,
But
wow.
I did wonder, because you just mentioned Montreal, so, and I know that recording, and that was
Oh,
50.
53.
Something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, so that's totally fascinating. Were you playing an instrument?
No, I
Not
was
at
just
all.
a fan. Yeah, I didn't.
You just like listening to it?
Yeah.
And so that was through your friends more? They were influencing you with that? Or your family? Did your parents go to the...
Oh, no, they weren't interested in music. And my parents were quite old and completely different generation. No, my mother had liked music, but just popular music.
What was their background then, your parents? Were they said they weren't musicians.
No. Not,
What did they do for a living?
my father worked for the telephone company. And my mother was a housewife, a homemaker, as they call it.
And how many children?
I have two sisters, one older and one younger. My older sister was in the theatre when she was young, before she got married and had children. But there was no musical connection, and there wasn't any particular music in the house. So it was just through my group of friends and listening to the radio, because you could hear late at night. You could hear these what were called race stations from the United States.
Just black music?
Yeah, and also there was so much going on in Montreal. I can't believe when I think back about it what we were exposed to, because there was a small black population in Montreal that lived in a different part of town. The place where Oscar Peterson came from. It was Little Burgundy, it was called, south of a certain street. And the majority of them worked on the railroads as porters. Well, his family did,
His family?
Yeah, his father was a porter on the railway. And, but there were a few other black musicians in that. And there were a couple of musicians who'd come after the war, had settled in Montreal, come from Brooklyn. And they'd sort of the same generation as Mac Roach and Sonny Rollins. So, and these two guys, well, there's three of them, and they played in this sort of seedy nightclub in the old part of Montreal that, was open till 3 a.m, and there were, juggling acts. So they had to play for them, and hookers and everything in this place.
You went to that?
Yeah. When we were like 16, we'd go to these clubs.
So you could get in?
Oh, yeah. It was totally corrupt town in those times. And everything, a cop car would pull up at this club. Guy'd go in, he'd walk out with a crate of beer. It was that kind of scene.
Who were the musicians that you mentioned?
There were B.T. Lundy, who's a tenor player, Walter Bacon, a drummer, and Buddy Jordan, a trumpet player. But they knew all these people, so when people would come to Montreal to do a concert, they'd come and sit in at this club with these guys because they knew them. When I finally went to university, when I first started playing, I was studying maths and physics for 1 year, and I found I was completely not smart enough. I switched to social sciences and then slid down through the next couple of years. But and then I started getting interested in playing, and I took up the saxophone and the flute, and I studied part-time at the conservatory, just taking saxophone lessons.
Is this still in Montreal?
Yeah.
So you went to University of
McGill
Montreal?
University, yeah. Which was a pretty amazing time as well, because, I heard Glenn Gould play, I heard Willem Kempf play, the pianist. Because the head of the conservatory was a pretty advanced composer, he was a Hungarian guy, but he brought over Stockhausen to give a lecture, who he'd been in the country or in America. So there are all these things, and then some other friends that I met in university, we formed the Jazz Society, and we I don't know how we got the money, but anyway, we got Kenny Dorham's quintet to come and play at the university, and it was with Charles Davis, the baritone player, Steve Kuhn. He was only like a year older than me, but he was a fantastic piano player. This is in the early it's before I came here, so it was like 59. And with Butch Warren, I think it was Frankie Dunlop.
Wow, that's a great band.
Yeah, amazing that we heard all this stuff. And then my other friend, who went to a different college called Sir George Williams, he put on a concert, and he brought Monk to his college. And this is what is amazing. It was Charlie Rouse and Monk, but something happened to his drummer, so he brought Elvin Jones to play with Monk.
You saw that one?
Yeah. And they had no bass player, so a local bass player called Freddie McHugh played with them. It was extraordinary. And afterwards, Elvin and Charlie Rouse went down to this nightclub where these guys that we knew played.
Did you see him there as well?
Yeah. Incredible, yeah. Just took over the club and had a jam session. So anybody who came to town had a connection with these three guys who worked in this club would go down there and play afterwards. So it was really extraordinary. And lots of people, you wouldn't believe this, but in a coffee, there was a Viennese restaurant, and this guy was keen on jazz, so he put on jazz at the club once a week or on the weekends, and he got René Thomas was living in Montreal for a while then, because it's French speaking and he's French Belgian, and then he brought Bobby Jasper up to play with him a couple of times, and then J.R. Montrose, and Pepper Adams used to come there as well, because they had some connection. So there were all these things going on as well. And while I was at university, Jimmy Jufrey's trio came.
Which one? Which trio? The one with Jim Hall? Or?
Jim Hall one, yeah. And I can't remember if it was Ralph Pina, the bass player. Yeah, but
on the album anyway.
But my memories kind of go on, and then, yeah.
And you liked all of this, did you?
Yeah, it was totally because I was a big Jimmy Jufrey fan. So listening to his record, I really liked his writing, even though I wasn't learning how to write or even trying to. I just was attracted to his writing and
which albums? What, larger ensemble ones or small group? Or?
Well, I knew the stuff he wrote for Woody Herman, because I loved. I used to have the first Heard album of Woody Herman, which is fantastic. I wish I could hear it again.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? What's it?
Well, they were first, second, third Heards. The second was the one with Jufrey and Getz and Chaloff. The first Heard was Ralph Burns and, oh God, all those names have gone now. But it was, the fantastic band, and I just loved the music they played. And
did you see that as well?
Oh no, but while I was at university, this other friend who'd brought Monk to had his fraternity. He was a member of one of those fraternities.
What's that?
There are, you don't know, for fraternities and sororities, they're groups of people who get together at university, and it's like a closed club. It's kind of nauseating, really, but they're
Masons or something.
Sort of like that, but it's for college kids, to have a group and feel part of something, and they get up to stupid things. But anyway, this guy, my friend Guy, hired the Woody Herman band to come and play a dance at the university. And afterwards they had this party at this fraternity house, because they always have a house. I don't know how it works financially, but and all I can remember is all the guys in the band were out there, and Bill Harris, the trombone player, he was a terrible drunk, but he'd found an electric drill somewhere, and he was going around his house drilling holes in all the walls. but so it was an amazing time, really, what we got to hear, and the funniest thing about Lionel Hampton, I really loved, because I was like 13 or 14. It was so exciting. They used to march through the through the theatre, playing "Flying Home" and all that. And there was this tenor player called Morris Lane, who was a kind of rhythm and blues, but really good. And there was at one point in the production where he'd lie on his back with his feet in the air, playing the tenor, and Lionel Hampton would drum on the soles of his shoes. But the odd thing about that was that Charlie Mariano and Herb Pomeroy were in this particular tour. They obviously needed 2 more players, and they were there. Because I knew them for records, because this friend had records of the Herb Pomeroy 9, that Charlie Mariano was in, and people like that, okay. Yeah. So it was just an amazing time, really, when I think of it, and all the people I got to hear that we did, When you think that people here sort of had to get a job on the Queen Mary to go over to New York to hear Charlie Parker and stuff.
To all that, weren't you?
Yeah.
So, what age did you start playing?
I'd start in university. I was 17 or 18.
What did you play first? What instrument?
Saxophone, alto.
Alto.
Yeah. And I took lessons from this guy who was an amazing musician. He was like a real 19th century, called Aldo Romano in Montreal, and he taught at the conservatory. And just to give you a picture of the way things were, when Don Smith, this trumpet player, was at you weren't allowed to tap your foot in the conservatory.
In the whole building?
Yeah. But there was one, and there was one other saxophone student and I. He was really good. He'd been to Westlake in LA, before. It was a college where Bill Holman went for a bit. But we had to practice in the basement of this conservatory, which was an old Victorian house, so they were like the coal cellars that had been converted into practice rooms. Anyway, this guy, Aldo Romano, he was really good teacher, and a real old-fashioned, strict guy. I'd heard of it. He'd sort of rap people on the knuckles if they made a mistake.
From what perspective was his teaching? Was it a purely technical thing, or jazz?
Oh yeah,
not jazz.
Not jazz. No jazz whatsoever. No.
Scales, studies. Or
Sigurd Rascher.
Classical.
Yeah.
He was the long Sigurd Rascher.
Well, I never got that far, but it was never that good. But he was an amazing musician. He also played oboe and English horn. And I remember hearing this story where he had to play the art of the fugue, and he transposed an English horn part or an oboe part one way onto the other instrument. It's that kind of guy.
Okay.
So that was good, and I had a really good flute teacher called Mario Duchesne, who taught at the conservatoire there. He was a really good flute player, but he was world renowned for being a recorder player. But he'd recorded stuff with Jean-Pierre Rampal and stuff like that. So there were good people there. So.
And you were doing both at the same time, then? You're having lessons?
Yeah, just that's sort of working to try and pay my way on the side.
You're working? What were you doing?
Well, doing little pickup gigs on the saxophone.
Oh, so you're doing gigs then?
Yeah, just a bit. And well, you'd work a long summer job to pay for your university education.
Playing?
No, a day job, sort of. I got a job through my father in the telephone company, which paid well, you know, because those days, you know, you could get jobs like they weren't terrible big jobs like they are now for young people. You could get a job that paid well and give you enough money to go to school.
Oh, so you paid for your education?
Oh yeah, there was no grants or subsidy.
And your parents didn't?
Well, they contributed a bit, yeah. But
so there were fees? And
oh yeah,
were you living at home still?
Oh yeah, that's an unusual thing to me, that people go away to university, because almost all my friends went to the same university. It was a good university. It was well known for medicine and engineering, and some great scientists that worked there. His name I've forgotten. But yeah, all my friends all lived at home and went to university. Nobody went away. It was kind of unusual if you did.
Right, it seems like it's more a rite of passage for people to leave home.
Oh yeah.
That's what it kind of is. It's why people go out of London, they go to Manchester or something.
Yeah.
Not everybody, but I think that's part of it, isn't it?
Well, it would. Yes, you had to pay for university. It would also need a lot more money to be able to go and live somewhere else, because you didn't have any grants, you know, unless you had a scholarship. I mean, those were the only people I knew who went. You know, they got a sports scholarship, or they were a genius, and got a. You know, there were a couple of. It was amazing. My last year of high school, there were two guys who won Rhodes scholarships, which is, you know,
quite a big deal.
Yeah, oh yeah. You got to be pretty bright to do that.
So what did you do? 3 years or 4 years at university?
I can't remember. I didn't graduate because I just.
You stopped?
Well, I shifted from one thing to another, and then I ended up doing music, and I wasn't enrolled in a course to get a degree, and I probably wouldn't have managed it anyway. But by that time, I decided I wanted to come to England.
So the music was outside of the college. You weren't doing a music course there.
No, I was just taking lessons there.
That was it.
And I took the odd history course 1 year, but most of the time I was just hanging about with other people, ligging. But also, an important part of that was between these two colleges, because I had friends at both.
Oh, remind me the name.
Sir George Williams, it's called, the other one, and McGill University is mine.
Oh, okay.
The one I was at. But this really famous Canadian trumpet player called Herbie Spanier was doing workshops, and it was my first attempt to try to write something. I can't remember what it was, but at least I think it was a minor blues. And he was encouraging of me, so he kept mentoring me, and I hung around with him, and he used to organize jam sessions here and there, and I met other players who were way much better than me, and because I was never any really good at as an improviser. I just didn't have the performance thing. But I was interested because I could write something for these little groups, you know, and get. Yeah, I started to make up tunes, so they got played by other players who were better than me.
Where did that come from then? Did you have composition lessons?
No, never had anything.
Did you work out things from recordings?
Well, at one point, like in my early teenage years we moved house, and we had inherited a piano from somebody, so I used to fart around on the piano just trying to work things out, tunes and stuff. I didn't know anything about writing music, but I just tried to find things. I'd listened to so much music over the year, or I'd heard so much music, whether I could say, and I got I remember getting a record player when LPs came out, and got a copy of Miles Ahead, and I just played that till it wore out, and then bought another copy. And I didn't know anything about transcribing. I just played it over and over again till stuff went in, registered on my brain, and then I tried to find it my own way. I never wrote for anything more than a sextet or something at that point, but it was that kind of stuff was percolating, I think, what I'd been listening to all those years, and also Bill Holman, because I remember hearing Kenton when they came to this big ice hockey rink, because that was a big show. And having some of their records, and I really liked his music because it was more contrapuntal and not big block harmonies like Bill Russo's was more like that, and some of the other writers for Kenton, whereas Holman's was much more linear, and that I didn't know why. It was before I even tried to write anything, but it just felt right to me because of. Well, I don't even know how much Bach I'd ever heard before then, but the minute I did, it just felt like that was what I wanted to hear because of the contrapuntal aspect of the music. And I had some lucky encounters, like just because I didn't know anything about classical music either, but just some neighbor, their daughter had a Andrei Kostelanetz record. He was the Boston Pop Symphony Orchestra. So they used to play popular classical music, and then when I got to university and was at the conservatory, I had a good friend, an American guy, had come to study there, and he turned me on to lots of stuff, Bartók and Berg and all sorts of contemporary music, but so I picked up listening to stuff from various people around the time.
Did you have piano lessons?
No.
Can you play the piano?
No. I still
you
bang around.
Play chords on the piano?
Yeah, but not in time.
Okay.
It's just when I'm trying to work something in. Yeah.
So your composition is all in your head, is it mainly, or you?
Oh no, I have to.
You have to use the piano.
Yeah. Unless it's something I've worked on already, and then I can do something with it away from the piano, and also having music notation programs now, you can check things out if you got it right. So I use that a lot But I try to work with a pencil and paper, because if you get stuck into the computer immediately, then you start doing things that aren't. Well, I find myself doing things that aren't musical necessarily.
Okay.
It's just. So I try and work things out as thoroughly as I can and sketch on a piece of paper first.
Okay, so why did you come to England?
Well, that was the thing you were mentioning about other people going away to university. It was getting away from home. I wanted to come to England because my father's father was English. He'd been here during the war, my father, so it was a natural thing. It's the home of the English language, And a friend of mine who wasn't a musician, but a journalist, but he was a friend at that time, and he also had the most fantastic record collection, you know, thousands of LPs, and he had everything from Lead Belly to, what's his name? Well, he was the first person I knew who, you'll have to tell me, he just died recently, the free pianist. Tony Oxley played with him. Cecil Taylor. He had everything from Lead Belly to Cecil Taylor, and all kinds of strange things in between. You know, he's just had a wide interest. And there was another guy in Montreal I went to school, primary school with, who was also, he was a journalist he wasn't a journalist, he wrote about jazz for Jazz Magazine, and he was a photographer, but he had an equally huge just so there was just all this stuff available to listen to, and you know, open your ears to new things. And then going back to that Herbie Spanier thing, because he'd worked with Paul Bley before, when Paul Bley was out in LA and playing at the Hillcrest with Ornette, he invited Herbie to go out and play with them for a bit, and so when Herbie came back, he was all enthused about all the stuff they'd heard and been part of. So he was kind of trying to get people in Montreal to, I mean, there were people who were experimenting before then, and he did as well, but it sort of moved things along, I think.
So you saw him play live as well?
Who?
Herbie.
Oh yeah.
But did you see Paul Bley live?
No, never in that time, no. Oh, no, I did earlier, but with other people's bands, sort of thing. Maybe his trio once in the middle, before he went to New York. I heard him a bit, yeah.
When did he go to New York? 57 or something? Was it earlier?
Well, it might have been earlier.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, he sort of disappeared off the scene, so he must have been. And then he made that record with Mingus and Max Roach, or Art Blakey. Yeah. Anyway, so the reason I came to England was all those things, leaving home, and I had a girl I was fond of, and so she came to England, so that was another impetus to add all these other things. And this friend, the journalist, wanted to come too, so we came together on a ship.
Did you know where you were going? Where you were going to stay?
No, just got off the boat at a place in Wales.
In Wales?
Yeah, well, it was a Scottish freighter. It was a quite traumatic experience because it was, you know, freighter. They used to take a few passengers to go on the freighters because it was cheaper than going on an actual jet. And but the food, I remember being faced for the first time with tripe. That almost made me want to turn back. Anyway, so yeah, Swansea.
Swansea, okay. So the boat would have been transporting other things.
Oh yeah. It was a freighter. Yeah, I don't know what.
I don't know what it was.
So that you just, you know, there were a couple of cabins for passengers, and that was it.
So
and there was nothing to do.
Very few passengers.
Oh yeah, 6 or 7 maybe. Yeah.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, it was just to make money and it was a cheap way of getting across the ocean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, everybody did that in those days because to go on a liner was, you know, cost a fortune. It was for.
Okay, and how long did that take then?
6 or 7 days. Yeah, and it was quite rough some of the time.
And did you bring your instruments with you?
Yes. Wait a second. Yeah, I must have had. Yeah, I had an alto. Yeah, an alto and maybe a flute. I don't know. Things slipped out of you. mind at the time. I must have had, yeah. I think I had a Buscher then, yeah.
So you arrived at Swansea.
Yeah, took the train to Paddington, and my friend Bill, the journalist, he this is going to get extremely weird, because he when he was out of work as a journalist, he worked on this stock scam in Montreal, and one of the other people he worked with was an English filmmaker called Dennis Miller. So this was the only connection we had with anybody in England. So we pitch up at Paddington Station. He rings this guy, and he's in a studio in Soho. So he says, come down here and we'll sort of figure out a place where you can go to stay. So we go there. It's this downstairs in some little studio in Soho. And this guy is interviewing, what's his name? Names are going to go. Derek B. Oh, God.
What, an actor?
Yeah, the famous Derek
Derek.
Dirk Bogarde, sorry.
Or Dirk Bogarde?
Yeah. So we just sat around in there, and then he told us...
That's a good story.
And he was being a real arse, like a real acting up. And the guy was having a hard time interviewing. Anyway, he gave us the name of this place, which was called the British Overseas Club, and it was in Chelsea. So we went and stayed there for a couple of weeks until we found a flat. Oh yeah, that's a great. I mean, it just, when I look back at my life, how lucky I've been to hear all these things, and then all these people I met just through sheer accident. So we find this flat off Ladbroke Grove, right? It's in one of those old, great big Victorian houses that were flats at that time. This is 1962, and I went around there a couple of years ago, and they're all been reconverted into single,
What road is it?
Bassett Road. Anyway, so we're in this basement flat, grotty, cold, damp basement flat, and this is the winter of 62, 63. But anyway, in the house opposite, in the basement flat, was Russ Henderson, the pianist and steel pan player. And so we got to know him, and he used to run this Sunday jam session down at the Coleherne Arms in Earl's Court, around there. It was a gay pub in the 1962. It's weird that, it was, everybody in there was gay, but he used to play there on Sunday lunchtimes, and he invited me to sort of come and sit in, which was really...
On alto?
Yeah.
So that was the year you came, 62?
Yeah.
So you
September,
were 24?
Yeah. Yes, I can't remember.
Okay.
So I get here, my friend, because he's a journalist, he gets a job at Reuters or something, but I don't know anybody. But this guy, Herbie Spaniard, gave me the name of Kenny Wheeler because he knew him vaguely from Toronto or somewhere like that. And he knew Art Ellefson because he's a Canadian tenor player who was from out west where Herbie was from, so I knew him. So he just gave me like a verbal introduction.
He was here as well, wasn't he?
Yeah. They were, and Kenny and Art were both playing with Dankworth at that time.
Oh, okay.
So I rang these people up, and they invited me to their house, so I got to meet them, and then and also Don Smith, the brother of my high school friend, he was still a trumpet player working at the Sadler's Wells then, I think. So he invited me out to dinner and stuff like that. So I got, and through Kenny, but more through Art Ellison, he you know, I sort of met guys in Dankworth's band and went to a rehearsal or something like that, and I got my first gig through the alto player in Dankworth's band. You know,
What's that?
oh, it's a name I won't be able to remember. He's a really nice guy, but it was a Greek wedding in Russell Square. That was what they.
Was he doing the gig, or he just?
No, he just
depped
depped it to me. Yeah, which was really generous. You know, people were so nice. I mean, extraordinary.
So that was very quickly that happened, did it?
Yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, it was just like one gig and then another gig. So I didn't have anything going on. But at least.
Did you have any money?
I can't remember the amount, but it was.
You brought some money with you.
Yeah, but then it was something like. Oh, I can't remember. Maybe £25.
Everything was cheaper though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everything.
Oh, yeah. But this place in Chelsea that we stayed at the first time was really expensive, so we had to get out of there and go and live in this grotty flat. But anyway, so through them I met a few people, and Art. I used to go on gigs with him. You know, that he'd play at the Bull's Head, and I meet other people and down Wardour. What was that club on Wardour Street? The all nighter. What's it called?
Marquee?
No.
Oh.
Where Georgie Fame used to play.
Oh, that's Flamingo? No.
Yeah, maybe.
Because
Yeah.
other people have mentioned that in an interview. It was
I think it's the Flamingo.
owned by gangsters. Is it that one?
Oh well,
Probably
weren't
all
they
one,
all?
weren't they?
But no, just
Yeah, anyway, so the club he played at, okay.
yeah, and met, you know, all the older faces, like the drummer, God, famous drummer.
Phil Seaman?
Yeah, all those Larry people. So I wasn't doing anything, but at least I'd met these people and gone to hear things, so that was really good. So those were the main things. Then the next spring, which is far more important, well, I met in a rehearsal band in South London, I met John Sermon.
Which rehearsal band was that? Who was running that?
He can't remember and I can't remember, but Barry Fogey was in it, trombone player from BBC Big Band. And John remembers this better than I did, because he was really annoying, because he had one of those sprays for his slide, you know, kept doing it all the time to make up for not playing so good. But anyway, so I met him in that band, and he remembers this, but I don't remember. Either I brought a little chart along, or he liked something about me. So after that, I didn't see him because I worked on the ships after this horrible winter, the horrible 62, 63 winter, you know, and there was, when I first arrived, there was still fog about and smog, and we're living in this place, and it was horrendous. And then
What time of year did you arrive in?
September, but by November, December, you know, like the fogs hit, and then the ice and the snow and the pipes freezing and all that in a basement, unheated flat. It was pretty horrendous. Anyway, so I got this job on the ships, and I did the crossings from
Playing?
Yeah, in a dance band on the ship. Yeah, so I got to go home to Montreal, and a bad thing that I missed was missed hearing Coltrane. Like the ship docked like a day after they finished, and it was with Roy Haynes, because Alvin had been busted or something in New York. So
Which club was it? Isn't it?
no, I don't. I've forgotten the names of a lot of the. Yeah, I mean,
Half Note was.
No, in Montreal.
Oh, sorry, Montreal.
Not New York. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Montreal with Roy Haynes. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the other thing in Montreal. There's a couple of clubs, because I remember hearing Art Farmer and Jim Hall band, and there's this club. I was at a Sunday jam session. I wasn't playing, I was just listening to local musicians playing, and these four guys came in. It was they were on tour with Benny Goodman, and it was Herb Geller, Pepper Adams, and Scott LaFaro. And Scott LaFaro sat in, like watched all these jaws
They're
drop.
playing with Benny Goodman.
Yeah, he toured with Benny Goodman.
Or was it a big band then?
Oh yeah.
Benny Goodman, big band.
Yeah. Well, Pepper and
Yeah, it was big.
Herb Geller, and I forget who else, but yeah, it was just amazing. Anyway, so I worked on these trips for 9 months, back and forth from
But hold on, what year was that then?
63. After this hard winter, I got to...
Scott passed away before then.
Who?
Did you say Scott LaFaro?
No, I skipped back
that's
to
going
when
back.
I lived in Montreal.
Yeah,
I was in
okay.
the late 50s. Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
before he died.
Yeah.
I heard him before he died. But
So
I never heard him
before
with...
Bill Evans.
Eh?
Probably before Bill Evans then. Before he played with Bill Evans.
Could be, yeah.
Because that was
I-
59.
Yeah, it was pretty close. Yeah, but I make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I looked up Wikipedia entry for Scott LaFaro, and it does say he played with Benny Goodman. Yes, just to make sure.
Amazing.
But then on these trips, so that was before I left Montreal, hearing Art Farmer and those people, and then, but on the trips back, I got to hear Sonny Stitt, which was always an idol of mine, but he was in a bad state, with alcohol. It was still good, but it wasn't like the great Sonny Stitt. And also Bill Evans' trio, I guess it was with the second bass player.
Chuck Israel.
Yeah, I think.
And Paul
But-
Motion or not?
No, it wasn't
No.
Paul Motion. It must have been
Larry Bunker.
Larry Bunker, I think. Yeah, but he was in a bad way as well. And somebody said he had oedema. Like all his hands were all swollen up and stuff. And that was a bit disappointing. But anyway, and then so basically, I then did a cruise on that ship to the West Indies. And then I went to Nottingham, worked in a palais for a couple of years.
Okay. How
Uh,
many nights a week was that?
6.
Oh, it's a full-time job
Oh yeah.
in Nottingham.
Nottingham, yeah.
So you lived there for...
Yeah,
that
2
period.
years, yeah.
Oh, wow. What was the name of the band? Can you remember?
He was a trombone player who used to play Bob E. No. He never was famous, but he played with a guy that used to, names, those kind of names I can't remember. Anyway, he was the dance band guy. There was nobody. Anyway, sorry,
So
lost.
it was alto.
Yeah, alto and baritone by this point. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it. After I came off the ship, so I auditioned for this gig on alto, but I wasn't good enough. The other guy I auditioned was a much better lead alto and experience. It was only 3 saxes and trumpet, and this little band leader played trombone. So I played alto and baritone. And then after a couple of years, then I went back on the ships for one more cruise, and then I came to London Now this is where I get things out of whack. And I did summer seasons, and then was out of work for 9 months and stuff like that. And then I found after this last summer season I did in Great Yarmouth, I came back to London, and then I found a place to live in not Ladbroke Grove, but that same area, and Ladbroke Grove, Notting Hill Gate, and I bumped into John Sermon in the street with his partner Janet at that time, and he invited me down because he remembered me from this one rehearsal.
Oh, you only met him once before?
Yeah, as far as I can remember, yeah. Anyway, so he invited me down to the old place, Ronnie's old place, where he was rehearsing, playing with Mike Westbrook. So through that I met all those guys, Alan Jackson, Malcolm Griffiths, and Mike Westbrook, and yeah, that was the other amazing thing. He just formed his big band. I forget what they'd made their first record, but they were still doing gigs off it. And he invited me to play baritone in the band, even though he had John Sermon in the band. He just wrote another part so I could be part of it, which was incredibly generous, Mm-hmm. So, and that was the first gig I did with that. It was such a thrill. I mean, it was just so exciting.
In London, did you? Was it
No, it's in Liverpool or so. We're doing, it used to be colleges circuit then, which he did quite a lot of, and and then I don't know what happened in what order. So I met all those guys, and there were so many things going on in the old place at that time. I mean, it was when John Stevens was there, and he had his group, and he used to do these little improvisation workshops, like free playing, and I remember taking part in one of those. He was another really welcoming person, anybody could come and play and stuff like that. And there were, I forget the name of the orchestra that Neil Ardley ran.
New Jazz Orchestra.
New Jazz Orchestra, where there was all those people, and the Brotherhood of Breath, the Blue Notes, were around at the same time. So I met all, you're hanging out at the bar and you met all these people. And then John and Mike Osborne used to do the Monday night jam session. So John got the idea of putting on an evening of my music, even though I hadn't written.
You haven't written anything?
Well, I hadn't written a whole bunch of big band charts, but he thought it'd be a good idea to do something, so he offered, and he put together the band because he knew all these people better.
John Sermon did.
Yeah, and I was in the hospital having an operation. He organized this whole thing and put it on this night. So this Monday night, and he got all the people he knew, and he knew a lot more people than I did, and so it was basically the Westbrook Sextet, with Mike Osborne, Harry Miller, Alan Jackson, Malcolm Griffiths, I think maybe even Dave Holdsworth, but he got a few other people like Gordon Rose. Do you remember that?
Gordon Rose?
He taught at Morley College. Well,
what did he play? Trumpet?
Trumpet. He was a trumpet player.
That's right, yeah.
And I was so impressed with him because I'd done these. I only had a few charts. It wasn't enough for an evening. But anyway, I on the night of the gig, I presented him with the parts, and he sang them all back to me. He was that good a musician, but he was quite a legend at teaching at Morley College.
Morley College, because I played in that when he did it.
but I didn't really know much about his history
Oh,
apart
right,
from
yeah.
into Bill Russo. Is that who he studied with? Was that the guy?
He might have done, yeah.
I thought
Because
that was he had all
Russo.
those parts, didn't he? All the charts.
Oh, right.
I think that was where he
Because
came from.
Yeah, because I remember
Musically.
going to one of those Bill Russo rehearsals because he used to hold them at midnight, and all the session players, and I went with Kenny and Art Ellison, I think, to that. Yeah, all the guys used to play because they really wanted to do it. I don't
It was
know
just
where.
a rehearsal.
Yeah, yeah. They never. I don't think they ever did gigs or anything.
And it had to be
But-
at midnight because they're all working so
Yeah,
much in the day.
yeah,
Everybody.
yeah.
Wow, amazing.
But anyway, so that Gordon Rose and Ian Carr were in the band, and that's where I first met John Taylor, because
So this is late 60s now, is it?
1968, yeah.
Yeah. So when you were at the old place, the new club was going as well, wasn't it? For a while?
I guess it started, yeah,
I
and
think
he
he
kept
gave
it
them
going.
at least for 2 years. or
Yeah,
something.
yeah, something
Running.
like that, yeah.
So that one was in Gerrard Street, wasn't it? The old place.
Yeah, yeah.
I never went in Chinatown.
Yeah, down the stairs, yeah. And I remember when I worked in Nottingham, I come down on the day off, I don't know what day it was, used to come down and go to hear things, and that was the first time I heard Sonny Rollins. That was mind-boggling.
In the old place.
Yeah, where he'd start playing in the band, would come out and play for an hour, and then go back and continue playing in the band. I mean, it's
It's
just
an amazing thing to see. Like.
yeah,
So that was, who would that be? Stan Tracy?
yeah.
Dave Green?
No,
Rick
well,
Laird? Or
no, it might have been Rick Laird, yeah, and either Ronnie Stevenson or Johnny Botts.
and Sonny, they played there for a month or 3 weeks or
Oh,
something.
long, yeah, it seemed a long time.
And Dave Green, because I interviewed him, he told me that Sonny just played one tune each set,
Yeah.
the same tune.
Yeah, so I remember asking Stan about that years later, Stan Tracy, and saying, you just didn't know what was going to happen. You just had to, he never told you anything, you just had to hang on and pick out what he was going to play. Because he'd do those insane introductions where he'd go through several tunes, wouldn't he? It was like going through his... going through his mind, trying to pick
Yeah.
something that he wanted to play.
That must have been wonderful. seeing
Yeah.
that.
Oh, yeah. There are recordings of that. This friend of mine from Montreal I came over with had them, and I may have them on my hard drive because they were or some of it was recorded.
Well, yeah, that's true. I mean, who told me about this? Stan Tracy, because I interviewed Stan.
Oh, right.
I got an interview with Stan,
Yeah.
and he told me about playing with all those people. And Les Tompkins,
Right.
do you know who he is?
Yeah, the drummer. Yeah.
No, that's Trevor Tompkins.
Oh.
Les Tompkins, he wrote for Crescendo magazine.
Oh, right.
He's still
Sorry.
around.
Yeah.
He's still around, and Stan Tracy told me that he recorded everything down there.
Really?
And Stan said to Ronnie, is this all right? Ronnie said, yeah, it's fine. It's just for my personal use. Then years later, he sold them all to Harkit Records, which I don't even know what it is.
Harkit.
Yeah, all these recordings.
Oh. Wow.
Most of the people are dead, Sonny Stitt, Ben Webster,
Oh,
Stan
right.
Getz,
Yeah.
Sonny Rollins, everybody.
Mm.
And Stan Tracy said it was such a problem trying to get any money out of him, the record label, for
Yeah,
this.
I can imagine. Yeah.
And we weren't consulted at all. And he just said, I rang up Sonny Rollins, because Sonny was still alive, of course. And Sonny said, and told him, he said, and what he did was he just put them on his website as free downloads. It's quite a funny reaction to it, isn't it?
Yeah. Not thinking about the other players involved. Yeah.
Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, I don't know whether that's still the case, but I remember Stan telling me all about that.
Oh.
So your friend who's got the recordings, did he do it himself?
No, he bought them online
just
from
bought
some.
them?
Yeah.
It's probably those ones then.
Yeah. I can't. He's dead now, my friend. But I don't remember when they came about, because he moved back to Canada, and I used to see him occasionally when I visited. But my friend is I'm talking about, and he used to start. We had, when he got into digital, then he had every bloody record you could think of. So I used to copy some of them off them. He'd give me access to his all the stuff he downloaded, and I'm sure I got that one, but.
They're probably 10, 15 years ago, maybe they were released.
Yeah.
Certainly wasn't at the time.
Oh,
Much
no,
later.
way later, yeah.
40 years later. So, okay, so that's related to what you said.
Anyway,
so
that was
this
while I was in Nottingham. I came down to hear those things at Ronnie's, yeah. But then there was all these different groups hanging around or playing at the old place, which was a fabulous, and I met, through Kenny, met Evan Parker and those, Derek Bailey and all those people who are at the little theatre club doing that imprints. And
was that at the same time? It was a little bit later. Little theatre was when? In the 60s and 70s? Or?
Well, I'm speaking about from the point I got started at the at the old Ronnie's old place through to the early 70s.
Okay.
So I've just sort of met more and more people through being there in association with John Sermon.
Did you play at the old place?
Just with that big band.
Oh, you did with them?
Yeah, and then because all these rising stars were in my big band, like John and initially Kenny and Alan Skidmore and John Taylor, that I got to do a broadcast, so then I got to be known a bit more. So
did you get the broadcast? How did that come about? Did people just hear about you, or?
I'm sure it must have been somebody like John, because virtually everything that I've done, either directly or indirectly, relates to John's sermon, because I'll tell you why. First of all, we did that first gig, and then, I don't know, through his connections with people in the BBC, I think I got offered. He knew a couple of producers, because he'd done a couple, and maybe Skid had, and John Taylor was just starting to make a mark. So through connections with those people, they offered me one. And then and Westbrook as well, because he was doing a lot of things at that time.
Where was that, Maida Vale? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, well, no,
Golders
originally
Green,
it was both Golders Green and that one down by Whitehall, the old theatre.
Whitehall?
Well, down the bottom. It
Don't
was
think I know that.
it's if you listen to a lot of old radio programs, they might have come from there. But
Okay.
I think it's, Humphrey Littleton used to introduce them, and Peter Clayton occasionally, and Charles Fox. I sort of got to meet them through, because they either introduced the program or wrote the blurb about it. And I think, but mainly again through Sermon, because he was like the hottest thing going then, and everybody, Ronnie Scott had him in his octet, and he played even, well, this is later, but anyway, so we did a couple of broadcasts, like one a year, but and then got the odd gig, and then through making John had this contract with Decca, and he had one left to do, and he didn't want to do any more, because he was then now he'd moved to Europe, and he was working around Europe, because he was a hot thing, and he performed with first of all, he won after with his work with Westbrook, right? He did the sextet, did lots of gigs in Europe, or some, and he became famous and he won some awards, so he had to perform with a band, and John asked me to write a tune or an arrangement to play at this ceremony. So
Which
my
country?
name,
Where was that?
Holland. It
Okay.
might have been connected with the North Sea
Okay.
Festival. I think that was the only thing going at that time. That early.
What, early 70s?
Yeah, very. Well, that was maybe 69 when he first
Okay.
won some kind of award, and had to do it. So it might have been Belgium. I don't know.
And which country did he live in then? Where did he move?
He was. Well, I may get this out of sync. It was before he'd hooked up with Bar Phillips and Stu Morton to form the trio, and then they all moved to live in Belgium for a while.
Oh, okay.
But he did so many different. Then he was in Paris for a year working with a dance company, this American dancer.
Did
But
they
he
do something with SOS there, didn't they? The trio, the saxophone trio that he had.
Yeah, I think that was a bit later
Was it
though.
later?
These were the. Yeah, I think the SOS was after the trio.
Yeah,
But
it was,
yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yes, because he came back to England and lived in Kent after the Belgium, and then after the trio broke up, and then he had a group with Albert Mangelsdorf for a while.
Yeah.
Mumps, I think it was called.
Yeah.
So through him working all over the thing, and occasionally he'd ask me to do a chart if he worked with some band that got the names of cities in Switzerland that Art Farmer was in, and Benny Bailey. Anyways, a radio band, it was a steady gig for them. Anyway, I wrote a piece for that, and I remember one of the bands he was some Austrian jazz orchestra, Fritz Power was in, and I wrote a piece. I just remember his name because it was on the list of all the, and I'd heard of him. I wrote a big band arrangement of one of John's tunes for this big band. So I got known sort of around through his recommending me, or and then eventually, I can't remember the sequence. And then we made, because John had this contract and had to do one record, and he suggested presenting my music as so we made Tales of the Algonquin.
So is that the first record of yours?
Yeah.
Under your name?
Well, it's under his name, right?
Okay.
Because my name wasn't known at all.
Were you still playing then?
Yeah, I still played baritone in my own band, but I didn't take solos because I, had enough really great players, and I've never felt confident enough to do it.
Okay.
So we made that record, and that kind of really got me noticed because of him, and people would play it because it was his record, even though it was all my writing. But it was, it's the suite itself is based around him primarily.
Yeah.
Though that's not entirely true. But anyway, it features him in virtually every piece. So that got me. I don't know exactly how, but also him working around, and some of the other guys like Malcolm would get to do, Malcolm Griffiths, the trombonist, or John Taylor would work in Europe with somebody and might mention my name. So I'd get, and that, I don't know directly who recommended me, but I got this gig with Kurt Adelhagen, who ran what is now the Cologne band, WDR, big band. But he ran it in those days, and they had so much money. It was just they used to bring musicians from every country in Europe, and do these projects, and I got to do one. They'd bring the lead trumpet player from England and tenor players from. So you met all these guys and from all over Europe. So and I did that, and that was really great. And you got paid. Oh, Jesus! It's just they had so much money in those days.
70s.
The Germans, the early 70s. Oh, you got treated like an artist. That was the difference, and then because of sort of, I don't know, I think mainly through the records sort of got a bit known. So there was a guy in Germany who was interested in bringing my big band over, so we did these shoestring tours, playing in strange little places in Germany, and but it was great for the band, to play night after night. You rarely get the chance, and I was played in a lot of different places in Germany, and one in Switzerland, that famous place Willisau, where everybody's played. It's run by this very famous graphic designer. He does the posters for all these concerts that he puts on.
Still the same guy?
Yeah, he's amazing. I never knew, my ex-wife is a graphic designer, and she knew of this guy. We just knew him as the guy who promoted this, and he put on a lot of experimental jazz, and he had everybody from all over the world, and it's just a tiny village in Switzerland. Anyway, he's done posters, and you can see them online. He's a fantastic designer. And
I've got an album, Mike Osborne live at Willis.
oh, right, yeah.
I always remember that. When I was a teenager, I bought that album.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I always wanted to play there.
Yeah.
I'll keep trying. It's still going, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
I think there've been albums there recently. Okay. Then what developed for you in the 70s?
Well, nothing much developed, but I'm...
Just sorry to stop you. Were you still playing?
Yeah.
Outside of your band? Were you doing like the function gigs or anything like that? No. So you could survive. How were you surviving?
I don't know how. At that point, well, you do one, like the Kurt Edelhagen thing, doing that. Could live off that for months. It was just, and life was cheap. I mean, we lived in this, shared a flat. Oh, that was the other thing. Even though I lived around the corner, I eventually went to live in the flat that had been Mike Westbrook's, but he then passed it on to John Sermon and Malcolm Griffiths and John and his partner Janet. So there was the three of them, but there was another room, so they invited me to come and live there.
Okay.
And it was just amazing, like the throughput of musicians that came and went from there, because John and Malcolm were playing with Westbrook, so there'd be all those people around, and then people would come when John made that record with John McLaughlin, Extrapolation, and they rehearsed that in the front room with Tony Oxley and Brian Odgers. And then, then John was working with the trio, and Bar Phillips and Stu Martin would be around, and then, I don't know, I remember Roswell Rudd, he was over there, and he came and he practiced in the front room for 7 hours. And
so
then
you could play there, there's no problem playing?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Where?
The neighbours, I don't know
which
how
one's that, the Bassett Road?
No, this is the Elgin Crescent.
Oh, Elgin Crescent.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
The famous
There's quite a
flat,
few famous jazz houses.
Yeah.
The other one is Sinclair Road.
Yeah, with Ray and Ron.
Because I interviewed Ron there.
Eh?
I interviewed Ron Matheson there.
Oh, really?
He's still there.
Yeah, I know.
4 or 5 years ago, maybe.
Oh, right.
Yeah. He's been there.
Oh yeah, for
50
donkey's
years.
years. Yeah, I remember because I had a friend who lived there who wasn't part of that. It wasn't Ray or Ron, but yeah, it was an amazing house in McPine, and yeah, some stuff went down there.
Sure, yeah. So, okay, so that's another famous jazz house.
So I was also doing, in terms of, and Mike invited me to play in that Love Songs band. So I played in his band. So I did gigs with him, and then
Mike Westbrook.
Yeah, and did a couple of recordings with him because he was doing lots then. He did those several Marching Song and all those great albums.
You were on some of those.
Yeah. Even the ones with John, because by that time he'd left Westbrook's band, but he came back to make the records. So like he was the featured soloist, and I was the guy in the section. So yeah, and there were a few gigs like that, and I played with mainly as a dep, because I played in the New Jazz Orchestra at some festival. I remember. I think I was depping for, oh God, what's his name? The oboe pianist used to play
Carl
with
Jenkins.
Carl Jenkins. He used to play baritone at one time, and he couldn't do a tour with the London Jazz Orchestra, Barry Guy and Tony Oxley.
London Jazz Composers.
That one, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I did that some tour to the Berlin Jet Festival where we were stranded in some part of Braunschweig in Germany for a week. I don't know. Yeah. And I did do some playing around that period. I did work with pop groups and did the occasional recording session, just as
just on baritone?
Yeah, mainly baritone, not alto. Yeah.
You didn't tour with a pop band or anything like that?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, Beach Boys, and that was 69, yeah.
In this country?
No, it was all over Europe. It was quite amazing. First of all, I liked Brian Wilson's music, some of it, not all the surfing crap, but we went to Czechoslovakia in 1969. This is the year after the revolution had been put down, and there was still martial law in the country. And they did these concerts. They were just out of this world, because it was like all these people that had been shut down, and having something from the West come there and perform was a real big deal, like social and political event. Even though they weren't, the Beach Boys weren't political. It's just the event, somebody in America. That was pretty amazing.
Was it a horn section or was it a big band or how?
No, just 6 horns, I think. There were
horns.
2 trumpets, trombone, a tenor player, and baritone.
Did Brian Wilson do the arrangement?
No, he wasn't. Yeah, he must have done, but he wasn't around then. He was injured. He had broken down by that point.
So he didn't do it?
No, he wasn't there, no.
And was that a whole British horn section?
Yeah. And, and there was a percussion player who was South African, but he lived in London. But they're all, we're just the hired help, to sit at the back of the bus and have nothing to... It was really funny, sort of like going, you arrive in Paris and pull up at the Ritz. They'd all get out and get on. We'd have to get our bags out and walk around Montmartre looking for a cheap hotel.
Oh, you didn't stay with...
Oh, of course. Oh, no. Kidding. Just like, you're just the staff, basically. Okay. Yeah, same old, yeah. Then I did one with he was a soul singer. He was supposed to be the protege of the guy who was the Dock of the Bay. What was he called?
Sam Cooke.
No,
Not
the
Sam
other
Cooke.
one. The other soul singer. Anyway, this guy, he was a one-hit wonder, I think.
Otis Redding.
Oh, he was the protege of Otis.
Oh, okay.
He's called Arthur Conley. And years later, I found one of my sons had a copy of this record that we'd have to play, twice a night. But we did this horrible tour of Spain and the north of England, the van. And, never been so ill. Anyway.
Did you record with these bands?
No. It's just a few others in little sessions, rock and roll sessions, just as a horn player.
Did this go on into the 80s?
No, everything sort of went. The 80s weren't a good time. Because everything that was fantastic that happened to me was basically in the late 60s, 70s, until much later. Well, no, I shouldn't say that completely, because then in the 80s, but I was doing a part-time day job, driving for a magazine.
In the 80s?
Well,
like
after I met my wife, then she worked for Time Out, then Time Out had a strike, then they started up this other magazine called
City
Limits. She worked for that, and I worked for that some of the time.
Okay.
Just driving, taking stuff to the printers, and then I started, some guy left in a huff, and I took over doing the classical music listings, but everybody was on the breadline because they had no money. It was supported by the GLC for a while, and it was a real shoestring operation. And so I did that for a while, and then John started got the idea of starting the brass project, so that changed things a lot.
But he asked you to write for that.
Yeah, he. If I can get the name of the group, he, in the 70s, when he'd been traveling around Europe, some roadie had played this tape of Les Voix Mystères du Bulgare.
Bulgarian Women's Choir.
Yeah, that fantastic sound. And it just got him thinking. He liked the idea of, because he'd worked with so many trios, just bass and drums, or even just drums. He'd done concerts with just Tony Oxley or Alan Jackson. He did it with Jack DeJohnette.
Yeah.
That couldn't think of anything more brave than getting up on the stage. Anyway, so he wanted to start this, and along those lines of having a brass choir plus his trio, which was going to be Chris Lawrence and John Marshall, because he'd worked with them a lot in a quartet and a quintet with John Taylor, yeah. So he asked me to write some of the stuff, so that started, and because it was him, we got good gigs and eventually got a record, so that really made a big change.
How did you get the work? Did he use an agent then?
Well, he was serious in this country. He also, because he'd made a lot of records with ECM, he had a guy in Germany, I've forgotten his name. That may have
Thomas Townsend, maybe. Or
yeah, who did organise.
With ECM.
Yeah, and he'd worked with so many, made records with Paul Bley and the guitarist, what's his name, the famous one.
Abercrombie. John Abercrombie?
Well, him and the other one. Sorry for names. It's Bill
Frisell.
Yeah, he'd done things with him. Yeah,
Don't remember anything with Bill Frisell. Okay.
Yeah, but he has work. So he knew, he was connected to all that milieu of superstar players.
He's an interesting phenomenon in a way. I mean, you know him really well, don't you? Because he must have been determined here somewhere on the line, or was realised, to get into Europe. There's not many British players who managed to crack that, are there? Really? But that time was probably easier. I don't know.
Yeah.
Because John Taylor was
eventually,
also the same. A bit later, wasn't it?
Yeah, a lot later.
And then he drove to Manfred Eicher's and made an appointment. And you can't really do that so much now. I think it was just at the right time. But it was interesting about John's sermons, because I don't know him, but I've seen him play a lot and looking as an outsider, his career, and very well supported by ECM. isn't it?
Yeah,
Still. Yeah. Rare.
But yeah, he had something that everybody wanted when he was really young. You know, he had this kind of. He was a catalyst in bands that made, you know, sometimes over the top, but it generated something in groups. And
good energy, isn't it?
yeah, and he played, you know, with virtually everybody here, and then went to Europe, and he played with loads of people there, you know, in all different kinds of, and that's one of the things about him, that he can adapt to anything. He has incredible insight, because he's not like a guy who has his own thing and he goes to one place and he just does his thing. He can work with people, and I think that's he can blend in with other things that aren't his usual setting. You know, I think that people really appreciate that.
But still sounds is
recognisable. Oh yeah, yeah. It never loses.
Instruments.
Yeah.
Interesting. So the brass project, that's the 80s then?
Started 80s, yeah, it ended in 93 or
and
4.
you did an album for ECM?
Yeah, in 93, yeah.
Oh, at the end?
Which they've just reissued, thank goodness, because it was out of print for like 20 years.
Okay, and I presume John just mentioned it to Manfred and Manfred.
Yeah, it took some doing. He wasn't that overly keen on it, but he got him to do that, and then...
Was he at the recording, or did you do it in England?
No, we did it in England. Steve Lake was the producer. I don't even know if he was in the recording studio. But so, well, before then we'd got quite a few gigs with that, and we got, you know, some good festivals around in Glasgow, Munich, France, Italy. We played in Orvieto, you know, sort of good gigs. And I think it was being managed by, it was by John Cumming and Sirius at that time, so...
Were you conducting it?
Yeah, as much as I conduct. I was directing the bit, you know, the joining up bits, because he was busy playing. But yeah, it was just great to be part of, and it was such a great band, you know.
What's the lineup of that brass?
3 trumpets, 2 tenor trombones, and 2 bass trombones.
And bass and drums.
Yeah.
And John.
And he played piano on some of the stuff as well, John. And
on the album?
Yeah. On one of the... He comps behind somebody other. On the trombone solo. Well, a couple of pieces, yeah. Henry's solo on the ballad.
I must get that. I haven't got that. Okay. But nothing further happened with Manfred after that?
No.
I mean, did you meet Manfred?
No, I've never met him, no. I hear all the stories, but yeah. But John still does make records for him, but you know, you got to fight your way in there, because there's so many pretty people want to be on there, or are already there, and who are bigger money makers. But but then where are we going? Where am I?
Well, so that's the end of the brass project.
Yeah.
By now, now you start playing completely in the 80s.
Yeah, it was 79, yeah. I had
you made a decision to not play?
Well, yeah, sort of. I was well, first of all, 79, we did a gig. I had a 9-piece. Yeah, it started this 9-piece years ago. Well, it started in 1968. And this is, that's a thing I skipped over, which is sort of important, because 68, after I'd done John Sermon started an octet, and he asked me to write a piece. So I wrote a piece, and because Skid was in that, and he just started this quintet with Kenny and JT. He asked me to write a tune for his group, and I wrote like 3 or 4, and they turned out to be like the best tunes I'd ever written, you know, really old San Juan. I don't know if you ever heard that, with Oxo and...
Which album? Not Paul's,
very-
I think again.
Hey?
Under whose name?
Alan Skidmore Quintet.
Yeah, I've got... Which albums? What's the album called?
I don't know. I've never had the album.
Yeah, there's...
He made one, then he had a different quintet with Malcolm Griffiths. But anyway, there's 3 or 4 of my tunes on those, and they were really... And, you know, he played one on late night lineup, and I got a fortune for that. You know, just having a tune played for 5 minutes on the television was just the royalty. Yeah. You know, it was a late night.
The band were on.
Yeah, the quintet was on. You remember the days when a jazz group was on television?
No, really, no.
Yeah, extraordinary. Anyway, so yeah, and so I wrote those things for Skidmore's group. And then the other thing that I sort of missed out was in all that period of the 70s, I was in this, there was a rehearsal band at the City Lit that Eddie Harvey ran, and that's where I met Mike Gibbs and Barbara Thompson, because they were in it as well. So I got to know, you know, Mike Gibbs, and we did gigs, and then the band was taken over by Alan Cohen, and then we continued to do gigs with that around, well, Kingston and I forget where, but...
Was that his music? What kind of music was it?
Well, originally it was Eddie's. I can't remember. I remember playing some, and then some of Alan Cohen's arrangements or stuff that had been written by other people. I can't remember exactly, but it was good, and it was a good band, and there were a lot of Olaf Vass, and I don't know, there's also... I remember all the people, but was Alan Jackson in it? Anyway, but that was another. But meeting Eddie was rather important because there's a in the 70s. At one point, Humphrey Littleton had a big band, in which he had a mixture of all the older guys, not necessarily older, but of that old school, who played in his small groups, like Tony Coe and John Barnes and people like that. And then he imported all these young Turks like Ray Worley and Skid and Sermon, and, you know, alongside Kathy Stobart. It was the weirdest
big band.
Yeah.
There is a small group album that I remember getting out of my local library with Ray,
Really?
Sermon, yeah. It might even be on Black Lion.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Quite a decent record label. Or was that Alan Bates' record label? Dave Green,
Right.
Tony Levin, I think, and Mick Pine. If my memory's correct, I think that was the lineup. So it was all of those players.
Yeah.
On a half.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I did a dep once for John Sermon in that band, just one little gig. And
What music were they playing?
I guess they're mostly Eddie Harvey stuff. It was traditional stuff, but I got to meet Kathy Stobart and became quite friendly with her, and sort of went to her. She used to have a big Christmas party, you know, and it was all those like Humph and people, Pony Coe and all those people, and some of these younger. Malcolm Griffiths was in the band as well, so it was all that mix of. Anyway, that's where I met my wife, because she was a friend of Kathy Stobart's niece. But it was just a nice mix of, you know, all these younger and older generations. It was really lovely.
Which part of London did she live in then, Kathy?
South London, Norbury.
Norbury.
I could almost. But it was getting to know Eddie Harvey that was really important, because he played on Tales of the Algonquin, and that continued right up. He was a big encourager of my music as well, you know, and he right up until the end, till he died. He came. We at the Guildhall, Martin Hathaway a few years ago. 5, 6, put on, brought John over, Sermon over, and we did Tales of the Algonquin with the student band, which is really lovely thing to do. But anyway, Eddie was there and all that. But I used to copy stuff for him, and when he was arranging stuff he used to write for singers and stuff like that. So. But and it was all that part in the 70s, in all those rehearsal bands where I met Stan Siltzman and Chris Lawrence, and because there were a lot of them about in those days. It was just amazing, you know. I can't remember his name. He arranged for Dankworth, trombone player. I think he just died, but he used to run a rehearsal band on the Balls Pond Road. I think this was before the 70s, where I went, and I think Frank Riccati and all those people were in it, so I got to meet all those people through that. And then I moved to York.
When was that?
In '89.
Why did you do that?
Well, we're living in Crystal Palace. It was pretty grotty. My wife comes from York, and her father just died, and we wanted to get out of London, so we went there to be close to her mother. We didn't have any work. I mean, she was a graphic designer at that time, but we just went with nothing. And I'd a couple of years previous, I'd been to Eddie Harvey had invited me to go with him to this jazz education conference in Sheffield, and there I met Adrian Tilbrook, who was a drummer, and who at the time was the organizer for Jazz North, and he knew of me somehow because he'd been in London during the 70s, and he when I moved up there, he had the idea of starting a big band in the Northeast, and he wanted to play my music, and he wanted to play drums, so he started this thing called the Voice of the North, so that kept me going, because he got commissions, and he got good funding for it for a long time. And we were able to do gigs, and then he got a commission for me to write a piece for John's sermon to play with the band, and they were a mix of professionals, semi-pros, and some students, from all over the region. So it was sort of flag bearer for the region of producing a big group like this that would represent. Oh no! But Adrian was fantastic in that he for me particularly, got all these different, and then I got a commission to write a piece for Andy Shepherd, so they bring in a big name to play with the band, gives it more publicity for the band, and also to keep the funding going if you're doing things like that. And then so I wrote a couple of pieces, and we got to play them. I mean, most couldn't travel far out of the region because of some of the people had jobs, couldn't leave. But we did quite a lot, and it kept me writing, which was good. Gave me the opportunity to write for a big band and the other. And then he got this thing where I don't know how it was created, because he was connected with the Durham Brass Festival. He came up with this idea of combining a jazz group with a group of brass band instruments, so he got a commission for me to write something for that. So I had a quintet with Steve Waterman and Mark Nightingale and a group of brass band players from all the bands in the area.
Mm.
So I wrote got a couple of pieces like that done.
Did any of this get recorded?
It did, but it was just a archive recording. Similarly, the piece with John, it wasn't high enough quality to put out. All the playing was great, but I mean, some of the music was really, excuse me, really good. And then he got commissions for other people to write things for the band. Like from Michael Garrick, Tim Garland, Jason Yard, Izzy Barrett. This whole, and then the funding stopped, and all this pile of music that's been written especially for this big band, is just sitting there doing nothing.
No, just finished.
Yeah.
When did that finish?
About 10 years ago, I think.
So you're doing it a while.
Oh yeah, it went for 10.
20?
No, not
10.
that long. I can't remember the exact dates, but 10, 15 years. And in the interim, I was teaching 1 day a week at Newcastle College.
What were you teaching?
Everything, harmony, arranging, composition. It was one of those jazz, commercial, and popular music courses, and a lot of people with no formal education, so it was really basic stuff.
Okay.
But as it turned out, there were some really good players, and I don't know if you ever encountered him, Andy Champion, bass player in Newcastle.
You got played with him.
He's really good. And he was one of the students at the time, and a guitar player, a couple other bass players, and a pianist who was in London for a while. You're southeast, not way out west, are you? You're not with them.
No.
You don't.
What is in way out west?
One of the students who was a pianist who ended up out there, and Anyway, so it was good.
So you did a day at Newcastle.
Yeah.
Did you teach at York?
No, I never taught it. When I
John
first
Taylor did, didn't he?
Yes, because he'd been working with Jonathan Ito in what's that main city in Devon?
Tinmouth?
No, that's a tiny place.
I know.
The biggest, not Plymouth, the other one, Exeter. They were at Exeter University together. And
there was
then
a jazz course there for a while.
It was. Yeah,
so John did that.
Yeah, he was there with John, and Jonathan Ito had studied at York, so he had a connection. So he moved up there, and he brought John Taylor with him.
So is he a piano player, John?
No, he was a saxophone player, but he's basically an academic who's now primarily interested in doing research on South African jazz as a connection. He's had Lewis up there.
Oh, okay.
Had conferences on that. People have talked bollocks about stuff they weren't part of. But yeah. So they never really had a course, but for a time they had a group. When John Potter, the tenor singer, you know him?
Yeah.
Very famous, great. When he was running the postgrad, they had a Julian Arguelles' octet as a group in residence for a while. And so members of the group would come up occasionally and do some tutoring to the students.
Well, Steve Watts is still involved, isn't he?
Yeah, that's... And in the last couple of years, Jonathan Ito asked me to direct the big band, so...
Oh, great.
But because it's not a jazz course, and they're not primarily... They're all classical students, basically. There are not many who have much clue about jazz, but it's still worth doing. And in a couple of the past years, there have been postgraduate students who had, you know, experience of jazz, and some were really good. So that was like help support the endeavor. But they, you know, this year it's bereft of anybody with that kind of experience, and the numbers fluctuate just like in any college, you know, the intake. So it's only 2 trumpets. But anyway, I've been doing that for the last couple of years, which has been good.
How often do you go?
Well, it's just in the spring and the summer term. We do 5 rehearsals, then do a gig. First 5 rehearsals, then do a gig, because trying to keep it going constantly. But it's difficult to. It's a fantastic music department there, because they attract a lot of fantastic singers and performers. They've got a great faculty, but jazz is not part of the curriculum primarily, so
Okay.
it's not bottom of the food chain, so to speak. You know. But anyway, it's still great to do. And Steve, so he comes up to do some tutoring, and he brings other people like Mike Walker and Martin France and stuff, who aren't taken advantage of, as they should be, you know, because it's not coordinated properly with the timetable. Anyway, but mustn't grumble about that, but they still do it, which is a good thing.
Yeah. Have you done any other teaching?
Well, just that bit at Newcastle, and well, I've done little workshops over the years, like one every 2 or 4 or 5 years, at the Royal Northern, Birmingham a few years ago. I've done the Guildhall a couple of times, both when Scott was there and when Shards, and then when Martin was, he brought me in to do, like, talk about my music and then play with the students, which have been great. I mean, I'm really enjoying. When Izzy was at Trinity, and when Gerard was at the Academy, I did
So
some
you haven't
little.
done one here, have you? Since Izzy?
No.
I'm trying to put a word.
Well, I mean, I've spoken. People have suggested it, not people in charge, because I've met. Sorry, I've forgotten his name. Oh, it's now Hans. No, the guy was here.
Was back at Guildhall.
Got to keep up. Yes, and I wrote. I haven't got. Last year, when it was my 80th birthday, and I was trying to get a tour, but I failed because Stan was 70 and he got one, and he got the money. And he got the gigs because he's Stan and I didn't. You know, nobody was.
Do you feel you were competing then for the space?
Well, for the space and the money, because there wasn't room for 2. I mean, the year before was Mike Gibbs, right? So he got it.
Right.
But it was it's always a fight. You got to get enough gigs, just the right number of gigs. If there's too many, then it doesn't work financially, and then you have to get the Arts Council money, blah blah blah. Anyway, so Stan was that. So, but I was, and I'd seen. I'd seen Jeremy Price and Hans at Mike Gibbs's gig in Scarborough, and I asked, you know, any chance? Well, Jeremy said, "Oh yeah, we must do something." Blah blah blah. People always do. Anyway, it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened yet. But yes, and I tried to get in touch with Hans, and I didn't get any reply. I don't know if I was on an old. Because I know him from years ago, you know, and I thought he would be
How did you
interested.
contact him?
Email and
I'll see him. I'll see him all the time. I'll mention it next week.
Yeah. Or
I'll
just
mention that I've done this.
all right.
And it'd be good to have you. But at least play your music. You should come in if they're going to play your music, because they do a lot of contemporary music, British composers.
Yeah. And Julian said it as well. You know, when I saw him
Julian
sometime.
Siegel.
Yeah. 'Cause he teaches here, didn't he?
He does, yeah.
But I'm just not, because I'm old. I have less energy to keep pushing people
Yeah.
to get things. I know I should do more, and I've got to get this piece recorded, get some money for that, for the 9-piece, so that we can try and get some more gigs with that. But
What are you going to do about that? Because you have released. Are they non-albums? The ones.
yeah,
Those
that was
two.
10 years ago.
Yeah, that's, I mean, and
And they
that
were-
was on Izzy's label, was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Both of them. So, what's the plan for this one? To release it on that label, or?
No, I'd have to find somewhere else. I mean, she doesn't have time to. She needs a company to run it, to promote it and stuff. She doesn't have time for that. Yeah, I don't know who else. And you need a record to get gigs, all that kind of stuff, And because it's such a big group, it's hard anyway.
Wouldn't release it yourself. That's easy now. Just start a label. You don't have to do anything, and then you're in complete control.
Yeah, but it's...
You can't promote it unless you've got a lot of money, though.
But
But being on another label doesn't work either. I've done both.
yeah.
Last album. I'm just saying this because of my recent experience.
Which one?
I did an album called Intention.
Who's on it?
Ethan Iverson.
Oh, right, yeah, okay, yeah.
Fred Thomas.
You would think that
James Madron.
Yeah.
No, I mean, we did a tour and I did the same thing, got Arts Council funded, did all this 2-week tour, was great. But the record label pretty much didn't have to say Ubuntu Records didn't do anything.
Really?
And I was thinking about it, I should have just put it out myself.
All right.
I didn't put any money into it at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
geez.
there was no point, unless it's ECM.
Yeah. Somebody with clout.
I don't think, unless maybe there are some small labels who do a little bit, but I don't know any in this country that will promote. If you want promotion,
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, the one that few people are with, I can't remember the name of it, but they're always they promote on Facebook, But what else? I don't know.
who's that? What edition? Or
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Tim Garland.
Tim's done. I mean, I've got one on there early on, but Tim's probably got one on there or two on there.
Yeah.
And they will promote some people by the look of it.
Ah, right. Yeah. Nothing succeeds like success.
Yeah.
If you're going to make it anyway.
But it might be worth contacting. Do you know them?
Yes, when we were trying to flog that old recording of the Brass Project, the Traveller's Tale, around, John approached him, the guy, I forgot his name, but
Dave Stapleton.
Yeah, but he said he wasn't interested unless you're going to do a tour.
Okay.
And with the Brass Project, that's not on.
So that's a different recording from the ECM one. Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, it was actually a BBC broadcast, but we're keeping that under wraps.
Okay.
From 1992 or no, 90. I don't know. It was recorded at. It was the first year of the London Jazz Festival, and I got a commission to write this piece,
Okay.
and we did it at the Janetta Cochrane Theatre. And John tried to flog it around when I reminded them that we had this. They gave me a CD of it at the time, and I just sort of got it out and listened to it. Thought it was pretty good. But they were the only ones interested. This guy, I can't even remember the name of the label it's on. They basically do folk music and reissues of a lot of jazz records.
It was released.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so there's another brass project out.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All right. If I'd had the presence of mind to bring anything down, I would give you one. I was supposed to bring some to sell at the gig, and I completely forgot.
So there's 2 brass project out.
Yeah, but I mean, it got good reviews. Everybody said, yeah, blah blah blah, but it just disappeared without trace. It was 2 years ago, and he brought it out, and then John got his 70th birthday, well, it's 5 years, some birthday of his concert at the festival. We did King's Place. And that was it, you know. It's too expensive a thing to do anywhere else unless you're on this festival circuit, and couldn't be any more.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to say that apart from the bits of playing I did, what I was mainly making my living at was being a music copyist, which I did for years and years, up until I moved up to Yorkshire for sessions for arrangers. That's where I met other people, because the story I told you about Kenny Wheeler, the first time I heard his music was this was 1963, the first year I was here, and having met Art Ellefson and Kenny, they took me, Art Ellefson asked me to copy an arrangement of his that he'd done for Ronnie Ross's octet. So I did that, took it along to the rehearsal, and I heard the first piece of Kenny's that I'd ever heard, arrangement. And even though it was for a 9-piece, it still had that Kenny Wheeler stamp on it, you know.
When he said, "Can you copy?" What did he mean by that? Copy? Actually, just write it out for you, or
write out the parts
it?
From a score. Oh yeah.
That's what it is.
A copyist, yeah. Transpose the parts and put them in individual parts. Yeah, I did that for loads of commercial arrangers, and for Dankworth and Bob Cornford and all sorts of people.
And of course, then it was all handwritten.
Oh yeah. And writing for strings, you had to write it on this onion skin paper that was translucent, that could then be photocopied on these ancient machines. I mean, it was, and if you made a mistake, you had to write in ink on this kind of vellum paper, and if you had to scratch it out with a razor blade, and if you missed out a bar, you know, you had to start over again, and all that kind of copying. And
did somebody show you the ropes with this?
No, I just learned it by doing it. I did, even when I was back in Canada, I did a bit of that. Just if you were learning to write, you had to learn how to score, and you usually, if you weren't being paid any money, you had to copy your own parts out if you wanted to get music played. So I had to learn to do it like that. And I developed a pretty good hand, but and you had to be fast, because in that business, you know, like if it was arrangement for the singer would keep the arranger waiting, then the arranger would keep the copyist waiting, and so you'd get it at 2:00 in the morning. It had to be made avail by 10 o'clock, so you had to work all night to get it done in time.
Okay.
And if you're writing for an orchestra where you had loads of strings, that you'd have to know somebody who had a machine who could make copies, and it wasn't all that common. You know, there wasn't a photocopier in every building like there is now. And these, as I was saying, these string parts had to be done on a special machine. So it was a nightmare, and you usually ended up working through the night to get something done for the recording session in the morning. So I did a lot of that.
Are you still doing it now?
No, because, you don't need to. Now with music notation programs. Although some people do, if you have a composer who writes scores by hand with pencil and paper, then somebody will put it into a computer notation program and print it out. Then once you've done that, then you have all the stuff there, so it's easier to change or reprint parts that go missing.
So that's taken that work away as well then, really?
Yeah, except for, again, like big composers who do write by hand and then get somebody to print it. So
Who writes by hand now?
I think Maria Schneider does
Okay.
still. There's quite a few people that are averse to using computers. A lot of people do nothing else but write on computers, a lot of film composers. But I mean,
Yeah.
George Fenton, who I worked with a few times on a few films, like just arranging little bits, he did all his stuff by hand. And it was still this is back in the 90s. And it was all copied by hand by copyists, you know. So I did a lot of that for years and years until I moved. So through the 80s and till the end, till I moved north, and there wasn't any work up there anyway. So I was doing teaching and running this Voice of the North band, and occasional arrangement commission I'd get from people. I did a project with Georgie Fame, because back in the 70s when I first met Alan Skidmore, he started working with Georgie Fame's septet, or it was a fairly 6 or 7 pieces anyway, and Alan Skidmore got me in, worked with them, playing with them for a while.
You played with them?
Yeah. Most drug-fueled band I'd ever seen. Just the first rehearsal was just like they both dropped acid before this.
Georgie
Skid, yeah. And the guitar player, I've forgotten his name, Green, something. He was
Green? No.
guitar, but he was monster. Yeah, but they all did, you know, smoking dope and drinking Guinness and.
When was this? 70s you're talking now?
Yeah, somewhere in the mid-70s. Yeah, after I got to know Alan and having written a few things for his band, then he started working with Georgie, and I did. But then later, sometime in the 80s, Georgie Fame did this project with NDR in Germany, because he was a big fan of Chet Baker's. And he'd written lyrics to a lot of Chet Baker's solos, so he asked me to arrange these particular tunes, and he sang the lyrics that he'd written to Chet Baker's solos,
Okay.
which are really nice. Yeah, that's good. So it was odd things like that, and occasionally John Sermon would ask if he was working with a radio big band somewhere around Europe. He'd ask me to write a chart or two. So that basically how I survived, with a bit of teaching, like every other musician these days, a bit of teaching, a bit of freelance work, doing the odd workshop, as I mentioned, with around at various music colleges, and that's it. Okay.
So there's been those recordings of there's Tales of the Algonquin, there's the Brass Project,
Yeah.
and there's 2 non-act albums.
Yeah.
There are other things under your own name?
No, that's it. Except for this last, The Traveller's Tale, that was a reissue of a recording that had been made in the 90s, but it only came out in the last 2 years.
The Brass Project?
Yeah, it was played by the Brass Project, but it wasn't recorded by ECM. It was a live recording from the 90s.
So that is available?
Yes, I'd have to look up the name of the record company.
I can search.
Yeah.
For it. What, British company?
Yeah. That's the
you
one
mentioned.
that mainly reissues. They do a lot of old brass, Brotherhood of Brass stuff, and
Oh,
it's got an
British.
apostrophe in it with a letter missing. I'm sorry, I'm just.
not Cuneiform. That's
No.
Canadian.
No. They
American.
it's American guy. Yeah, he reissued a lot of some of. Yeah, there was one of John's quintets with Mike Osborne that he reissued and had one of my tunes on. That's how I know him, that guy, Cuneiform. No, I can't remember the name, but it's called The Traveller's Tale. But I was because I was doing so little in the early 2000s, because by this time the Voice of the North had broken up because the funding had stopped and I'd finished teaching. Excuse me. And I was just really frustrated not getting my music played, so I decided I'll just have to invest some of my own money savings and make a record. And I thought, I can't afford to do a big band, to hire a recording studio and pay all the musicians, or either you don't get the musicians you want and pay less money, pay for less money. It's a horrible economic situation that we're in, or get people the best that you want and pay them a decent, it wasn't anything special, but it's just the union rate, to do. So I did that, a 9-piece, got together all these, some of who I knew and some I didn't at all, but I'd heard playing with various people. I thought, it's really, like I'd heard Gwilym Simcock playing in Kenny Wheeler's big band, and Stan Siltzman I've known for years, and heard Gerard playing with somebody, and just all musicians that I'd heard in some context or other I liked, and got them together for 2 days and made recorded enough material of my stuff.
Did you do both albums at the same time?
Yeah, it was but I was advised to release them separately and like a year apart to stand any chance of getting any exposure or selling any, which didn't work either. I mean, they got well reviewed, but that was it. And I managed to get one gig with that band, and that was at the Guildhall, and it was only because of Martin Hathaway being a big fan. He gave me a gig at one of their little festivals. So he's been a great support because he's had me at the Guildhall, and Scott has played my music, big band music, to a lot of the students through the years. And also it was used along with Kenny's and other people's when they started the London Jazz Orchestra. I didn't even know that till recently, but he told me that all the music that I'd given to him at the Guildhall they'd used to start the London Jazz Orchestra, along with Kenny's and a few other people's. So I decided to make this recording, which turned out great, but it didn't help in any way, either in terms of exposure, getting more gigs, or more work. But and I've done the odd thing again, because we've had this relationship going back 50 odd years with John Sermon, that he because he's been living in Oslo for 20 years now, I think, but he's played all around the country, and he had this connection with the Bergen big bands. He did a project with them, so he asked me to write or to use some of my charts that he already had. So they made a recording of mostly his, but some of my pieces as well. But they brought me over to do, to conduct the recording and that.
Do you arrange his pieces, or does he arrange it for the band?
We sometimes work together. It's really weird. By long distance, he would set up the basic arrangement that he might have had for ages, or he just worked and then there's bits didn't like. So can you suggest anything to do here? So I do a little bit not the other way around. Generally, it's mainly because he's busy and I'm not. So he doesn't have time to fiddle around with stuff and get stuff. So I've in lots of occasions where like tidy up scores, fix them of his, and send them off to the people that are going to play them, and so it's quite interesting to do because I'm kind of lock myself in a room for days and just do it, as opposed to the people who are work with other people, sort of free exchange of ideas. I don't have the opportunity, but I never felt confident doing that, working that way, because I have to chew things over for so long till I'm happy with it before I even throw it out there to anybody else to comment on. So there's been a bit of that, and nothing much else that I can think of, unless you've got a probing question you could throw at me.
Where are you living now? In York?
York, yeah, I've lived there since 1989.
Did you sell a house here, or were you renting? You sold it?
Sold a house, yeah, in Crystal Palace, 1989, yeah. That's when I'd sort of stopped playing before then, ostensibly to concentrate on writing, but I wish I hadn't. But anyway, we were decorating the house to sell it, and then I fell off a ladder onto my face and sort of broke my teeth, cracked my mandible, and took a long time for that to heal. And then I wanted to start playing again. In the 90s, when I was teaching in Newcastle College, I borrowed a saxophone and tried to play, but because of the crack in this part, the mandible, I think you call it, that the tooth the root of the tooth was loose, so when I was playing it kept moving around, so I gave up on that. And also I buggered up my arm, tendons of my arm.
By the fall?
Yeah.
Wow.
Broke my wrist and all that, but so I can't even play the flute because I can't hold my arm in that position.
Have you still got the instruments?
No, I traded the. This is quite funny and stupid. I had a Mark VI baritone that I'd bought off a session player when I first got this job in the dance band. And I had to do it on baritone, so I bought off this Bill. He was an old session player, but I remember I bought it for £200 in about, I don't know, 1964 or something. And he was selling it because he'd got this new mouthpiece and it didn't work with this baritone. So he had a room full of baritone saxophones. It was absurd, but it was such a beautiful. Anyway, I traded it to John Sermon for some work. I did. An Atari computer. Wasn't a good deal. But anyway, they got me started onto, trying to work on a computer like a Cubase, with 2 megabytes of memory. Do you remember that? Oh my God. Yeah. Where was I going with that? Yeah. So I didn't have a baritone anymore, but I still had a flute. Eh?
What about the alto?
No, I hadn't had one for years because I eventually, I don't know what happened to it. I think I sold it when times were hard. And I wasn't doing any playing on alto and didn't have any work, so I got rid of it. A shame, but there you go.
So you didn't record improvising on the saxophone?
No.
So you're quite an interesting person, aren't you? You've writing all this jazz.
I know.
With lots of improvising in it, solos for people anyway.
Yes, I've always been in awe of great players and had the opportunity to work with loads of them. And I was just trying to, well, because all the things I listened to in the past, like like Gil Evans, and then eventually Duke Ellington and Bill Holman, people like that, of the idea of integrating the soloist into the piece. So I've always all my music came out of song forms, you know, but because of what the changes that were happening in the 60s, and people like Mingus, and then Wayne Shorter that I was, and Andrew Hill that I was listening to, that really trying to extend those song forms but still keep within them, and with elements of free playing as well. But I was always kind of, because I wasn't a great improviser, I wanted to create an improvising environment in which my contribution could be important in not giving direction, but creating a platform. So I always think hard about what goes into the backing. Sometimes they're too much, and some people object to them and don't like them. I once had that period in the 70s when things were going really great, and I had the opportunity to work with the Danish radio big band, again through recommendations of other British musicians who had worked in Europe, you know, or they'd heard about me anyway. I got to work with Palle Mikkelborg and Niels Henning, Orsted Peterson, were still in the band then. But there was one piece I wrote, and the tenor player in the band, I've forgotten his name, he was a black guy, but he was Danish. But he couldn't deal with what I'd written in the background. It was too off-putting, so he refused to play, and I had to turn it into a piano solo. And it might have been really bad and off-putting, you know, because I have written some like that. I mean, arrangements of John's pieces that I did for this band in Austria. I mean, there's an intro. It's just this bizarre thing. I don't know how I got away with it, but he's so accommodating. John is. He'll go with anything, and he'll make it work. So, but that was always part of what I tried to do in the writing, is create a context in which the improviser isn't just playing over a set of changes, that it's trying to be within the context of the piece. As I started out with tunes, then the tunes got longer, because, you know, those things that people were doing in the 60s, like Wayne Shorter and a lot of Mingus's bigger constructions, you know, they were breaking away from the standard forms, and I was thinking along those lines. And then they got longer and longer, some of the pieces I've written in over the last sort of 30, 40 years.
Longer, you mean the form of a piece?
Yeah. That's like 64 bar choruses or something.
Cole Porter did that, didn't he?
Oh yeah. But he was the odd man out,
Yeah,
and he was unique in that way.
So you mentioned it a couple of times, Wayne Shorter and Mingus, their influences on you.
Yeah, and monk tunes. I was always obsessed. Just as a listener, before I even got interested in music, I just was attracted to those tunes. But I suppose that Miles quintet with Shorter and Herbie Hancock was a big influence, and the kind of space. And then listening to Although I never had real long conversations about music, about what they were doing, because people didn't seem to do it that much. It was like just learning little. Well, I copied a couple of Kenny's scores, so I picked out things I learned from there. You know, or just saw what he was doing, and if it related to anything that I thought I could do. And he did things a lot differently than I, but and Mike Gibbs too. One really good tune I wrote for Alan Skidmore has got a lick in it, excuse me, that I got from a Mike Gibbs tune. And so I just picked up bits from other people, what people, and listening to that stuff and the stuff that other people were doing during the late 60s and early 70s, and trying to incorporate bits of free improvisation into structured pieces. I don't know how successfully it worked. I was never totally with it. You know, I've always sort of keep coming back to harmony and melodies. I just seem to do that. Something that I can relate to personally, to make the thing go forward, to have some that I can connect with. But I mean, there are so many fantastic people writing very different stuff now, and it's a real eye-opener. And
Are you listening to some more contemporary writers in jazz?
Well, if I can remember, that Canadian guy that lives in New York, I've heard some of his stuff.
Who's that?
He wears funny old-fashioned clothing. It's from Vancouver. Sorry, it's going to be like that now. Names. He's got a funny name for his band.
Can't think who that is.
And I like some of the not some of it. It was Maria Schneider, but that comes out of the tradition pretty much. Like Gil Evans.
She studied with Gil, didn't she?
And Brookmeyer. Yeah. And Brookmeyer I like too. Some of his later work. Well, the stuff he did for Thad Jones as well, you know, another name. But they were more of the tradition, out of the tradition. I can't think at the moment. You'd have to throw the names at me. But there are a lot of people around that are doing interesting. Oh shit, there was something I just stumbled across the other day, and I can't remember the name, but it was. He has a Spanish name, but he is American.
Oh, yeah.
And it was really interesting.
Guillermo. Is that his name? Guillermo Klein. Not him? No.
Nothing registered, sorry.
A big band.
Yeah.
He does run a big band. I think he lives in Spain now. That's the guy I was thinking of.
All right. Could be, but there are a few people that interested, but I can't find. I don't know how I could bridge the gap from what I do and try and do something more adventurous like that.
To?
No, I've got to come to the conclusion that it's pointlessly me trying, because they grew up with a different set of
influences.
and values.
And your thing's unique to you anyway.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be able to do anything different. It was as well as those people do, so I might as well just start. But you don't want to become stale. I mean, that's what I meant. And listening to other stuff at least stimulates you to do something, and it'll come out different than what they're doing. But I need to push myself to do it more, because I need the stimulation. Because the worst thing when you're old is just to fall back on your own cliches, and you can't do that so easily. Same voicing, same setups. I remember once, years ago, when Hans Kohler interviewed me, and it was for how, I think he'd done Mike Gibbs and other people about how you write, and had a series of questions where I answered, which I thought were completely truthful. And I thought about it later, and it was complete opposite. Like, what I do, basically, it won't immediately sound exactly the same, but I'm looking at a bunch of pieces that I've done from the 70s to the 90s, and I'm doing the same thing over and over again.
In terms of...
And I was trying to make out that I start over fresh every time, and it was just bollocks, you know. But it was interesting to look at, because I've never analysed my own work. I've heard Mike Gibbs talk about his work, and he can really describe how he did things and what it meant and where it came from and where it went and all that. I never do, like trying to think of a title and make up some false story about the piece I've written, you know, just so it has a title. It is always like nothing comes to me while I'm writing it, or very rarely. That was something I thought of, but it's gone now. It was truly interesting. Not.
But is there anybody who really changes that dramatically?
What?
Is there anybody that changes that dramatically anyway?
Yeah, but if they do, I'm always suspicious of them. but that's because of my personality. Yeah, but it's hard. You've got to be true to yourself, but not too true that it becomes boring. You know what I mean? That you're not just going through the motions. So having the stimulation of other young people who do completely different things is always a good thing, even if the end it doesn't mean a lot to you.
Okay, should we finish there?
Yeah, but if that's enough for you, I'm sure it is.
Thanks very much, John.